Welcome to our deep dive. We're taking a look at The Technology Trap by Benedikt Frey. We'll be exploring how technological innovation has shaped societies and economies, and I think you'll find it pretty eye-opening.
It really is. One of the first things that struck me was how Frey tackles this fear of technology taking over jobs. The kind of anxiety we all feel sometimes. He calls this the Luddite fallacy. He uses the image of those textile workers, the Luddites, smashing those machines during the Industrial Revolution to kind of make his point.
Right, the Luddites. It's funny because that fear is still so relevant today, isn't it? Like when you think about the self-checkout lines at the grocery store or even more complex automation in factories.
Exactly. And while, of course, some jobs are lost, history shows that new ones always pop up. Think about it. Before the printing press, we had all these scribes meticulously copying texts by hand. What happened to them all? They didn't just vanish, did they?
I'm guessing they adapted and found new roles in this whole new world of printed books.
Exactly. Some became specialized in shorter texts where human touch was still needed. Others got into bookbinding or design. They adapted, just like we've seen over and over again throughout history.
So it's not necessarily about mass unemployment, but more about a shift in the types of jobs available.
Hmm.
But I imagine that transition period, that can be pretty rough, can it? Frey talks about the Industrial Revolution and how difficult it was for workers, even though overall things were improving, like with production and stuff.
Oh, absolutely. In Britain, wages didn't budge for decades, and the living conditions in those new industrial cities were pretty grim. It highlights a crucial point. Technology itself isn't inherently good or bad. It all comes down to how it's used and who benefits from it, right?
It's about the choices we make as a society. Frey actually makes this really fascinating comparison between, I think it was the Roman Emperor Vespasian and the British government during the Industrial Revolution. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, so Vespasian, he was presented with this new invention that would have made transporting those massive columns so much easier. Seems like a great idea, right? But he shot it down. You know why?
Why?
He was afraid it would lead to too many people losing their jobs, creating unrest and chaos.
So even way back then, leaders were thinking about the potential social consequences of technological advancements.
Exactly. Now, fast forward to Britain during the Industrial Revolution. There, the government was all for innovation, even though it meant some people would have a tough time in the short term.
So why the different approach in Britain?
Well, power shifted, you see. In Rome, the landowners, the guys in charge, saw any big change as a threat. In Britain, there was this new class of industrialists on the rise, and they saw mechanization as their ticket to wealth and influence.
So the politics behind progress played a huge role in how technology was adopted and who ended up reaping the benefits. That's a really crucial point for us to consider today, especially with all the new technologies popping up all the time.
It really is. It reminds us that technology doesn't just exist in a bubble. It's molded by our social, economic, and political forces.
So even though those early days of the Industrial Revolution were tough on workers, things did eventually get better, didn't they? What changed?
Frey points to mass production kicking off in the 20th century. Think Henry Ford and the Model T, the assembly line, factories going electric, these innovations, they led to massive jumps in productivity. And that led to higher wages and a better quality of life for a lot of people.
So technology can create prosperity, but it's not a given.
Right. Frey really stresses the role of social movements and government policies and making sure that workers got a piece of the pie. The rise of unions, those safety net programs during the New Deal, those weren't just lucky breaks. They were the result of people fighting for a fairer system.
It's a good reminder that we have a say in how technology shapes our world. We can try to use it to benefit everyone, or we can just let it make the gap between the rich and poor even wider.
And that brings us to a major turning point, I'd say. The introduction of computers back in the late 20th century. Remember all those anxieties about computers taking over everything? That mass unemployment was right around the corner.
It felt like something out of a sci-fi movie, for sure.
Frey points out those doomsday predictions, they didn't really come true. But what did happen is that computers started doing all those routine tasks, first in factories, then in offices.
So instead of replacing us completely, they started taking over specific jobs, or tasks, I guess.
Right, and what tasks were the most vulnerable?
The ones computers were good at, I imagine.
Exactly. All those repetitive, predictable tasks, the kind that used to be the core of so many middle-income jobs. Things like data entry, bookkeeping, even certain parts of manufacturing.
That's where we start to see the roots of the problems we're facing today. It's not just about jobs disappearing altogether, it's about certain types of jobs vanishing. And that's got huge consequences for the middle class, for everyone, really.
Absolutely massive. And it's not just happening here, it's global. Frey uses these two places, Port Clinton and Belmont, to illustrate how technology is really changing the economic and social landscape.
Port Clinton and Belmont. Tell me more.
Okay, so Port Clinton is like a stand-in for all those towns that have been hit hard by the loss of manufacturing jobs. Factories shut down, unemployment's high, people are really struggling. Belmont is the flip side. It's those thriving cities, the ones that are attracting all the skilled workers and reaping the rewards of this whole digital boom. Think Silicon Valley, Austin, places like that.
So we had this growing divide between the Port Clintons and the Belmonts.
Exactly. And it's not just about money, it's cultural, political, everything. And technology is a huge part of why this is happening. It's changing what work looks like, the skills people need to have, and where all the opportunities are.
Okay, that's a lot to process. We've gone from the Luddites smashing machines to computers taking over tasks to this widening gap between cities that are doing well and towns that are struggling. Where do we go from here? What happens when you throw artificial intelligence into the mix?
That's where things get even more interesting, and that's what we're going to dig into in the next part of our deep dive.
Can't wait.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the technology trap. Last time, we were talking about how technology has reshaped things, creating that divide between those booming cities and those towns that are struggling.
Yeah, and we kind of left off on a cliffhanger, didn't we? The rise of AI, artificial intelligence. It feels like it's everywhere you look these days. Those algorithms that seem to know what you want to buy online before you even do. Self-driving cars already cruising around in some cities. What's Frey's take on how AI could change things?
Well, he argues that AI has the potential to be even more disruptive than any of those previous technological revolutions. Think about it. Computers, they started by automating those routine tasks, but AI, it's different. It can learn and adapt. It can even do things we thought were uniquely human, like writing poetry or even composing music.
So it's not just those blue-collar jobs at risk anymore. White-collar jobs, even creative ones, they could be on the chopping block too.
That's right. Frey brings up this really interesting example, AlphaGo, this AI program that actually beat a world champion at the game of Go. Super complex game, by the way. This was a big deal because Go, it takes intuition, strategic thinking, creativity, all those things we usually say are part of human intelligence. So if AI can figure out Go, what else can it do?
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
Yeah.
And, I'll be honest, a little bit scary too.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean for the future of work? Are we all going to be replaced by robots?
Not necessarily. Frey does say that some jobs will be lost, but he also makes the point that AI can actually help us do our jobs better and even create brand new jobs that we can't even imagine right now.
So AI can be a tool that helps us work smarter and maybe even open up new possibilities we haven't even thought of yet.
Exactly. But the big question is, how do we handle this shift? How do we make sure that everybody benefits from AI and that nobody gets left behind?
That brings us back to the choices we make as a society.
Yeah.
What kind of policies, what kind of things do we need to put in place to deal with all the potential challenges AI could bring?
Well, Frey suggests a bunch of different policy responses, and a lot of them build on, the lessons we've learned from past technological revolutions. One big idea is investing in education and training, but the focus has to be on the skills people are going to need in this age of AI.
So not just your typical science and tech education, but also things like critical thinking, problem solving, being creative.
Exactly. Those are the skills that will make humans stand out, separate us from the machines. We also need to think about creating some kind of safety net for people who lose their jobs because of AI. This could mean things like wage insurance, programs to help people retrain for new jobs, maybe even exploring this idea of a universal basic income.
A universal basic income. That's a pretty radical idea, isn't it?
Mm.
What exactly would that involve and how would it actually work?
Basically, it's giving everyone a guaranteed minimum income, no matter if they have a job or not. The idea is that it would act like a financial cushion as people switch careers or go after other opportunities, maybe starting their own business or going back to school.
Sounds like it could really help with income inequality and give people more freedom to pursue their passions. But I'm sure there are some downsides too. What are some of the concerns people have about a universal basic income?
The big one is cost. How do you pay for a program like that, especially if automation starts cutting into tax revenue? And some people worry that it would discourage people from working and could lead to, less productivity overall. These are complicated questions for sure. They need a lot of thought and research.
It's definitely a thought-provoking idea, and it seems like more and more people are talking about it as a possible solution to these challenges that automation is bringing. But it's not the only thing out there. What else does Frey suggest?
Well, he talks about promoting regional development, investing in infrastructure, and making the economy more inclusive so it benefits everyone, not just those in those thriving tech hubs. He's also a big advocate for stronger social safety nets, like making sure everybody has access to healthcare and affordable housing. Those kinds of things can help people get through those rough patches when the economy changes.
It sounds like he's pushing for a more comprehensive way of dealing with technological change. It's not just about retraining workers or creating a safety net. It's about building a society that can handle rapid change and come out stronger on the other side.
That's a great way to put it. He's basically saying we need to change how we think about all this. We have to realize that technological progress isn't the goal in itself. It's a tool to create a better future for everybody.
Okay, so we've talked about how AI could impact us, the good and the bad. We've looked at some possible ways to respond to these challenges, from education and training to a safety net, and even this universal basic income idea. So what are the key takeaways from all this? Why should our listener care about how technology affects society and the economy?
The main takeaway is this: technology isn't destiny, it's a tool. And how it's used, who benefits, and how it shapes our lives, that's all up to us. The choices we make individually and as a society.
So it's not about trying to stop progress, it's about steering it in the right direction so it benefits all of humanity.
Exactly. We have the power to influence where technology takes us, to make sure it leads to a future that's more equitable and prosperous for everyone.
That's an empowering message, but it also feels like a huge responsibility. Where do we even begin?
It starts with understanding what's going on, which is what we're doing right here today. By diving into the technology trap, we're equipping ourselves with the knowledge to make informed decisions about the future. The next step is taking action. That could be supporting policies that promote responsible innovation, investing in our own education and skills, or even just talking about the role of technology in our lives.
So it's about staying informed, getting involved, and being proactive in shaping the future we want.
Precisely. And it's about remembering that history isn't just a bunch of facts and dates. It's full of valuable lessons that can guide us as we deal with the challenges and opportunities of the 21st century. Speaking of history, remember those Luddites we talked about earlier? They often get portrayed as backward, anti-progress. But Frey gives us a different perspective. He points out that they weren't against technology itself, they were against how it was being used to exploit workers and make a few people rich.
So what they did, it was a form of protest against inequality and injustice.
Exactly. And in that sense, they have a lot to teach us today. As we face these new waves of technological change, we have to ask those same questions. Who's benefiting from these innovations and who's getting left behind? Are we creating a future that works for everybody, or are we just making the gap between the rich and poor even bigger?
It's a powerful reminder that technology is never neutral. It always has social and political consequences, and it's on us to make sure those consequences are positive.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another important point: the role of government. Throughout history, governments have played a big role in shaping how technology impacts us, whether it's supporting innovation, regulating industries, or providing a safety net for workers.
So it's not just about our individual choices, it's about the policies and regulations we put in place as a society.
Right. Frey argues that we need to be more proactive in how we govern technology. We need to anticipate its potential impacts and take steps to reduce the risks while making the most of the benefits. He points to what happened during the Industrial Revolution. Eventually, governments stepped in to regulate working conditions, provide education and training, and create a social safety net. These actions helped to create a more just and prosperous society, even as technology kept advancing.
So the lesson is we can't just leave it all up to the market to figure things out. We need government involvement to make sure the benefits of technology are spread evenly and that everyone is protected from the negative consequences.
Exactly. And this is even more important now with AI, where the pace of change is so fast and the potential for disruption is even greater.
Okay, we've covered a lot in this part of our deep dive. We've explored the potential impact of AI, talked about various policy responses, and emphasized the importance of both individual and collective action in creating a better future. What's next?
In the final part of our deep dive, we'll get into Frey's specific recommendations for navigating this so-called technology trap and building a future that works for everyone. We'll talk about the importance of responsible innovation, social cohesion, and focusing on human values in a world that's increasingly shaped by technology.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the technology trap. We've been exploring how technology has shaped societies and economies, from the Luddite fallacy all the way to the rise of AI. It's pretty clear that we're at this, crossroads, facing these incredible opportunities, but also some potential dangers. So how do we make sure that technology leads us to a brighter future for everyone?
That's the question, isn't it? And Frey, he offers some pretty insightful guidance. He draws on his analysis of history and his understanding of what's shaping the 21st century. He doesn't claim to have all the answers, but he gives us this framework for thinking about these challenges, and he definitely issues a call to action for all of us.
I like that, a framework for thinking. It's easy to get overwhelmed by how fast technology is changing and how complicated all these issues are. So having a framework can help us break it down, make sense of it all. So where do we even start with this framework?
Well, one of the key things Frey talks about is responsible innovation. He's saying it's not enough to just invent new stuff. We have to think about the bigger picture, the social and economic impact right from the start.
So we have to move beyond just focusing on efficiency and productivity and really consider how it affects people, right?
Exactly. We have to ask ourselves who's going to benefit from this? Who might get hurt? What are the potential unintended consequences? And how can we minimize those risks?
It sounds like a much more thoughtful and ethical approach to how we develop technology. But how do we actually make that happen? Is this something governments need to regulate, or is it more about individual responsibility?
It's both, really. Governments need to create policies that encourage responsible innovation and hold companies accountable for the impact their products and services have on society. But it's also about each of us making informed choices about the technologies we use and support.
So it's about being informed consumers, being aware of the ethical implications of what we buy and the companies we invest in, right?
Exactly. Another important concept Frey talks about is social cohesion. He argues that technological change can actually make those social divisions we already have even worse if we're not careful.
Yeah, we're already seeing that happen, aren't we? The gap between the rich and the poor is getting wider. Political polarization is on the rise. There's this feeling that some people are being left behind while others are reaping all the benefits of this digital economy.
It's a worrying trend, and Frey says we need to actively work to strengthen social cohesion. This could mean investing in education and training so that everybody has a chance to participate in this new economy.
And it could also mean strengthening our social safety nets to protect the people who are most vulnerable to economic disruption. We talked about things like universal health care and affordable housing before.
Exactly. And we could also focus on regional development, making sure that the benefits of technological progress are spread more evenly across different areas. Remember those places we talked about, Port Clinton and Belmont? We need to find ways to bridge that gap and make sure everyone has a stake in the future.
It seems like a really big challenge, but it also feels crucial if we want to avoid a future where inequality and social unrest just keep getting worse.
Yeah.
It's about creating a sense of shared purpose, a belief that we're all in this together, even as technology keeps transforming the world around us.
I think that's a great way to put it. And it leads to another important point: the need to hold on to our human values in this age of rapid technological change.
What do you mean by that?
Well, as technology gets more and more powerful, it's easy to forget what it means to be human. We start defining ourselves by how productive we are, how efficient we are, how much we can consume and accumulate. But there's more to life than that, isn't there?
Absolutely. There's creativity, compassion, empathy, connection, purpose. These are qualities that machines, no matter how smart they get, can't replicate.
Exactly. And Frey argues that we need to put those human values back at the center of our lives, our communities, our societies. We need to remind ourselves that technology is a tool, not our master. It's up to us to decide how we want to use it and what kind of world we want to build.
It's about taking back control, reclaiming our humanity in a world that feels more and more shaped by algorithms and artificial intelligence. So how do we do that? What are some practical steps we can take to avoid this technology trap and create a future that's both technologically advanced and fulfilling for us as human beings?
Frey offers a lot of different recommendations, but I think we can boil them down to three main areas: education, engagement, and empowerment.
Let's break those down, starting with education.
Education is key, not just for learning the skills we need to succeed in this new economy, but also for developing critical thinking skills, understanding the social and ethical implications of technology, and nurturing empathy and compassion. It's about teaching ourselves and future generations to be responsible stewards of technology, not just passive consumers.
So it's not just about focusing on STEM subjects, but also incorporating humanities, the arts, and ethics into education.
Exactly. Then there's engagement. We can't just sit back and let technology happen to us. We need to be actively involved in shaping where it goes. That means supporting policies that promote responsible innovation, holding companies accountable for their actions, and participating in conversations about technology's role in our lives.
It's about using our voices and our votes to create the future we want.
And lastly, there's empowerment. Technology can be an incredibly powerful tool for empowering individuals and communities. It can give us access to information, help us connect with others, and make our voices heard. But we need to make sure that everyone has equal access to these tools and that they're used in a way that promotes fairness and justice.
So it's about making sure technology is accessible to everyone and ensuring that it's used to lift people up, not hold them down.
That's a great way to put it. In the end, Frey's message is one of hope and possibility. He believes we have the power to shape our technological future, to create a world where technology works for us, not the other way around. But to do that, we need to be informed, engaged, and empowered. We need to act with purpose, making conscious decisions about the technologies we use and the world we want to live in.
Well said. As we wrap up this deep dive into the technology trap, I'm struck by how important it is to have perspective. Frey's historical analysis reminds us that technological change is nothing new. People have been wrestling with its impact for centuries, and while every era brings its own challenges, it also brings new opportunity.
It's about learning from what's come before, embracing where we are now, and shaping the future with wisdom and courage.
Okay, so before we sign off, let's give our listeners that 10-point summary of the key insights we've pulled from the technology trap. These are the nuggets of wisdom to take with you as you navigate this ever-changing technological world.
All right, here we go. 1. Technology has always disrupted societies, bringing both progress and challenges. 2. Historically, those in power often resist technologies that might threaten their position. 3. The Industrial Revolution brought about huge economic growth but also caused hardship for many workers, at least initially. 4. Mass production and technological advancements in the 20th century led to the rise of a large middle class. 5. Computers and automation has started to replace middle-income jobs, which is contributing to rising inequality. 6. Technology's impact isn't felt equally everywhere, leading to political divisions. 7. AI could potentially automate even more complex tasks, raising concerns about the future of work. 8. Policy responses, especially investments in education and training, are vital for reducing the negative effects of automation. 9. Ideas like a universal basic income are being considered as potential solutions. And 10. The biggest challenge is figuring out how to harness the power of technology while ensuring its benefits are shared widely and its costs are kept to a minimum.
That's quite a list.
Yeah.
It really highlights how technology is this powerful force shaping our world in profound ways. The question is, will we be ready for the changes coming our way? Will we make the right choices to ensure a future that benefits everyone?
Those are the questions we all need to think about. The technology trap gives us a really useful framework for tackling those questions, and hopefully it inspires us to take action.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's given you some things to think about and a renewed sense of control as we navigate this technological revolution together. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those tough questions.